Greetings, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the Frozen Chosen, or as Caleb calls it,
The freezed cheesed.
yeah, that works. Either way, we're here to review The Chosen from beginning to end, episode by episode, from a confessional reformed perspective. I'm Nathan Wright.
I'm Caleb Wright.
And I'm Joseph, right?
We say our names, guys. And this week we come to episode 2 of season 2. But first, I want to address a comment. I don't care about the criticism, but someone did bring up a point that would be good to address. Dallas Jenkins and his advisors, a Messianic Jewish rabbi and a Roman Catholic priest. Oh, and there's an evangelical scholar in there too. I'm glad he realizes he's not the scholar. So it's the four guys. They sit down and they discuss each episode, which is pretty cool. I like the transparency there. Now, why have we not incorporated that into our review? Well, making the roundtables part of our review process would kind of mean debating or at least engaging with the views of the persons behind the show, right? So that would defeat the purpose of us, just being viewers, like most people would be, giving our reactions primarily to the content of the show. And so, we have marginally addressed the people involved where it's relevant, but we feel like that has mostly been done to death already. And so what we're doing is just standard content review process. And so for that reason, we feel it's most helpful to keep the roundtable discussions out of it. Now, I may at some point check them out. It's not like we've ruled out the possibility of ever looking at them, but we think it's fair for us to just give our thoughts as reviewers, as critics. So, having said all of that,
I'll go ahead and throw in. I didn't know those existed. And I would guess the average viewer of the show doesn't know they exist. So,
well, if you I don't know where you're watching the show, but if you go on the Chosen app, they're right there.
yeah, but I don't pay attention.
Okay, well, it's just, again, to be clear, guys, it's not like anyone's hiding this, but I agree with you. I don't hear a lot of talk about the roundtables, except among, like, the diehard fans. There are casual viewers of the show who wouldn't bother with them, and it's really for those people that we're doing this. Mostly, it's a show where we want to welcome everyone, but we know that there are a lot of people who just watch the show casually, and given the things that we discovered in season 1, that concerns us. It concerned us then, and it concerns us even more now. So, still, that's a cool thing that they do.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of episode 2 of season 2, Nathanael, who's an architect, is arguing with the foreman at a construction site, and as they argue, part of a building collapses and appears to injure several people. And then the foreman tells Nathanael, he's ruined, you're fired, go home, never want to see you again. And then Nathanael goes to a bar, tells the bartender about the incident. And then a scene with some serious Sergio Leone style. You get music and everything, so cool. Philip mysteriously approaches Simon, Thomas, James, and John. And he asks to see Jesus. And Andrew comes and greets him, brings him back to the camp. So far, story's pretty much just setting things up. So,
It made me think, though. I really had to... I began to reconsider the things that I was saying in our recap episode. When I was concluding...
do we reconsider on this show?
Never.
I was maybe giving this show too much credit in saying that it was just following John. It's really not true. It's more true than to say it was following any other gospel. But like, where was Nathanael this whole time?
Yeah.
I went back and checked John 1, and it's like, oh yeah, he's like one of the very first disciples, and he's been left out of the show until now. Not a huge deal, like theologically, but again, it's just another one of those things that I don't know. Why is it wrong?
Okay, so next, Matthew and Philip go to collect wood. Matthew talks about how he struggles with autism and tax collecting. And this was your note, so...
I didn't have much to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just recording as I went.
Yeah.
We can probably
Let's-
cut this part out.
Well, we don't have to do that, actually, I think, because it is worth noting that Matthew's autism is... It wore out its welcome in season 1.
Yeah, I think so.
Guys, we get it. He's autistic. we love him and accept him, and we see him, just stop. It's not a theological issue. It's just it feels very anachronistic the way they keep trying to say autism without saying autism. So, yeah.
I
Anyway,
almost thought it was getting better. Just the way they're showing somebody come along like Philip and be encouraging to him, learn to live with him, and also try to teach him to behave in a way that is more understandable to other people. I don't know. I get how.
why should that even be like the point of the
Well,
Gospels?
why should Nathanael being an architect be a point of the Gospels?
Well, it's not a point. It's a passive story beat. Whereas Matthew's autism has to be mentioned every opportunity the show gets, and it's not like the show is trying to diversify an otherwise monotonous story. That may not be the most precise word, but all these characters are not the same. You open up the Bible. Jesus was dining with tax collectors and prostitutes, and that's a part of the show that does not get ignored. So whose idea was it that, this show's not diverse enough? We need an autistic character in there. He eats with tax collectors, prostitutes, and autistic people. Okay. But lest I fall into the ditch of doing the thing that I'm accusing the show of doing, I'll move on from Matthew's autism now. So Nathanael sits under a fig tree, and he's just at his wit's end. He starts praying. He burns the blueprint to his dream project and tells God, this was done for you. It's a very touching scene. And he prays that God would not hide his face from him and says repeatedly, do you see me? Mm-hmm. This was a great scene.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Job. Even though he hadn't lost nearly as much as Job. His life, as he had always dreamed of it, was over.
Mm-hmm.
There's a nice cultural touch of him taking the ashes of his burnt blueprint
On
his head to show how distressed he is.
Yeah.
A lot of ashes. Surprising amount of ashes that he got out of that blueprint, but I appreciated the use as a prop.
Yeah. Well, Matthew wasn't reformed, so it couldn't be a cigar.
Okay.
This was before those days. Okay, so then as Matthew and Philip talk at camp, Philip says, from what I know, Jesus doesn't love everything about religion. Now, I was going to comment when you said something earlier, but Philip is kind of like a sage. He's a leader figure to these young, rowdy disciples who are still figuring out what's going on. He's been spending a lot of time with John, and I'll tie that into this point here in a minute, but I do like that. It's actually biblical for Jesus to train men to be leaders, to bring a man in who's already in a position to do that. It doesn't undermine Jesus in any way. And so I kind of like that Philip is an older, wiser guide to these other disciples alongside Jesus. But for that reason, I'm doubly disappointed in Philip's line here. Jesus doesn't love everything about religion. And this reminded me, my mind immediately went to a line from another fictional Jesus you might have heard of in a movie called The Shack.
Oh, Nathan, have you seen this?
I've seen it, and at some point, I want to do a video series on it because it was an influential movie book package. The movie was kind of a brief cultural icon, but the book, I think, was actually far more influential. And even though people aren't still raving about it like they once were, I still hear people talk about it sometimes. I met a guy street evangelizing who said that he was saved after reading it. And I think what that book did was fill a void. Mainstream evangelicals are starved for spiritual, something new. And the Shack provided something new that was tragically, it was just another well full of bad water that has since run dry. But I think the heresies in that book were more influential than a lot of people realize. And the movie, well, it would just be interesting to do a video series on that. So,
Now, was the movie worse than the book?
I don't know. I have not read the book.
Okay.
But I do want to clarify before I go much further with this The Chosen does not even scratch the surface of how heretical the Shack is. They are in two completely different ballparks. So don't mistake me for trying to compare the two. I'm just saying, when any portrayal of Jesus reminds me of the Shack, that's not a good thing. And the Jesus of the Shack makes a comment about how religion is too much work. And then later in the conversation, he says, I'm not exactly what you would call a Christian. Which, of course, brings up an interesting question. Should we refer to Jesus as a Christian? Separate conversation. We know what the movie meant by it, and it wasn't good. Yeah. So, that's a disappointing lie.
Now, I get that, and I agree. But let's also acknowledge that perhaps when Philip says that Jesus doesn't like all things about religion to Matthew probably understands. It probably makes sense to Matthew. The problem is when a modern audience is watching through the screen, and we hear that, and a modern audience is going to take this religion bad and run with it in a direction that is actually problematic.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but Philip wouldn't have said that. Number one, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but is there any mention of the word religion in Scripture in a negative context?
There's not many mentions of the word religion, although you could get more if you were to translate different words as religion, which you probably could.
Sure.
However, if we were to...
there is... Sorry, go continue.
Well, if we were to refer to Second Temple Judaism as a religion, it is simply a fact that Jesus did not approve of all things about that religion.
Okay,
In fact, he called it out constantly. Yes. And so my point is, when Philip says this to Matthew, maybe Matthew understands that that's what he means. But a modern audience is not going to be thinking about that. They're not going to think, oh, this is technically just a minor critique of Second Temple Judaism, or even a major critique. They're going to think, oh, it's a critique of institutionalized religion in general, because that's how the modern audiences take it.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, okay, I think you pretty much made the point that I was having a hard time keeping back. If Philip had said the religion of the Pharisees, okay, or the religious, I mean, where's the verse? There's a verse where Jesus is with the disciples on a boat, and he says, beware of the leaven of the scribes and Pharisees. They misunderstand him. They think he's making some allusion to bread because they forgot to bring it. And then he says, how do you still not understand? Because he's showing them all these miracles with bread. And then they get it, and I realize he's teaching them to beware of the teachings. I think is the word Scripture uses. Scripture doesn't say religion. It doesn't. And so even if Philip were to have said something like the religion of the Pharisees, well, that's not the way Scripture has it. Mm-hmm. The teachings of the Pharisees. Religious practices, I mean, yeah, if I were to do this Mott and Bailey thing, which happens a lot these days, where people say, I hate religion, and then they pivot and say, well, I just mean bad religion. Well, no, that's a different stance. If I look at the general lay of the land in the world right now, I see a lot of bad religion. And if I look even in the church, I see a lot of bad religious practices. That doesn't mean I have a problem with religion. It doesn't mean I have a problem with Christianity. It means that the church needs more sanctification. And sure, I can point to various religious practices and say I have a problem with them. Or I have a problem with the religion of that church, which is maybe heretical or maybe in serious error. Those are all things that I could say. But to just say I have a problem with religion, it misleads a lot of people. Another street evangelism example, some guy came up to me and said that God hates religion. I asked him where that is in the Bible. Because, seriously, for as popular as that is, there should be a Bible verse. At least try to take Scripture out of context. Being sarcastic, but there's nothing in Scripture that gives you a leg to stand on there. And so I asked him, where's that in Scripture? And he said, well, because... And I could have perhaps been more polite, but I cut him off. I was like, no, that's not a question. The answer was because. I need a chapter and a verse. We had a friendly conversation, and he had his friend with him who was kind of embarrassed for him. So he was a young guy like me, so we got along. But, you know, I was a little bit tough on that point with him. Go ahead.
Oh, just in Matthew 16. Starting at verse 5, when the disciples reached the other side, they had forgotten to bring any bread. Jesus said to them, Watch out, and beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They said to one another, It is because we have brought no bread. And becoming aware of it, Jesus said, You have little faith. Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not perceive? Do you not remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many baskets you gathered? How could you fail to perceive that I was not speaking about bread? Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they understood that he had not told them to beware of the yeast of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees.
Teaching. There you go. And also in the New Testament, when Paul is telling the churches to beware of false teachers, I mean, he could have done this in Galatians. The Judaizers, religion, religion, religion. He never did that. He was always telling them to beware of their teachings, not of religion. I suppose I wouldn't have much of a problem if you said their religion, but he never said beware of religion. Didn't happen. It's not in Scripture.
Right.
Big Eva made it up.
Okay, so in James, this man's religion is vain, if he bridleth not his tongue. And Galatians, for you have heard of my conversion in time past in the Jews' religion.
Okay.
Says that in the next verse.
So he's calling out 2 forms of false religion there, by name. He's not saying religion is the problem. He's saying falseness
Yes.
is the problem.
But then also in James we get religion that is pure and undefiled before God, etc.
Yeah.
Like as a good thing. So
Yeah, I can't think of a ton of times I've read the Bible and the English word religion was there. I'm not the language expert here, but
I would not claim to be a
compared
language
to
expert.
me, compared to me, you are.
I don't even know what Greek word it's translated from. So
Okay. Well, we don't necessarily want to be Greek geeks on this show anyway. But yeah, we focused a lot on the word religion here, and in fairness, there's the word everything as well. Philip isn't saying that Jesus hates religion. He's saying he doesn't love everything about it. But that to me just raises more questions than it answers because it's so ambiguous. Like, what? Like, speak a little more clearly, Philip. What religion are we talking about? Everything about religion, conceptually, true religion, pure and undefiled religion.
Second Temple Judaism, what is it?
Doesn't love everything about. Yeah.
It's the kind of ambiguity that, again, the modern mind is going to take and run with, even though maybe to Philip it's perfectly obvious what he means.
But yeah.
He hasn't come from our day where it's such a touchy topic.
Yeah, and this might be a good time to circle back to the round table thing because the fact of the matter is audiences are going to hear this line how they want. Now, will some audiences wonder about it and maybe go check out the round table? Sure. I'm sure that's what the round tables are there for. But what about the audiences who just don't bother because they like the way they interpret it? Can we say that it's really fair for the creators of The Chosen to say, well, you need to go watch the round table if you have questions? I suppose there could be a way to present the show that way, but that's just not how TV is watched. You don't create a TV show and then say, but it's incomplete without the study guide. Or if you do, you push them both equally. And the round tables are kind of tacked on as a bonus. So, see, it is lines like this that might pique our curiosity at some point, and maybe we will go see if they commented on it in the round table. All right, what's next? Philip and Jesus. They're talking when Jesus gets back to camp, and he calls Philip to follow him, which Philip does. Philip says that John's reputation with Rome is down, but his spirits are up. He indicates that John was in prison multiple times, so that answers some of our prior questions.
Raises a few more maybe, but
We'll take it.
Yeah, it does clarify that the show has chosen, no pun intended, to build John's history with multiple imprisonments. So at least we're on track with the show now. And then Peter scolds Matthew for writing down everything Jesus does. Says that people could twist his words. So true.
Yeah, that's pretty big self-own right there.
Peter asks Jesus about formalizing an authority structure for when Jesus is away. And Jesus says it's not the right time yet, but that Peter will play a big part in that future authority structure.
Sounds kind of Catholic. Just sounds.
One.
I think it's just kind of biblical.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I didn't think of the belief that Peter was the first pope. Mm-hmm. And yes, it is biblical, so
I just anticipated some people might object to that.
Okay, I would not.
I wouldn't either. I didn't think either of you would. I just want to read from Galatians. If I can find it. This is Paul speaking of becoming an apostle, basically. And when James and Cephas, that's Peter, and John, who were acknowledged pillars, recognized the grace, etc. That's just Paul saying, yes, Peter did have a position of authority in the church. Yeah.
And honestly, the way the show handles it, I think works to set that up and acknowledge to the audience that yes, Peter obviously does have these great leadership qualities, and Jesus isn't trying to suppress them.
Yeah.
But Jesus also understands that Peter's kind of hot-headed, judgmental right now. He needs a lot of training on how to be servant leader, so he's not going to get the top job right away.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, thankfully he didn't say anything like, Peter, one day you will be my vicar. He didn't say that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay, so Mary and Rama plan to study the Torah with Matthew. Rama says they don't plan to become teachers or anything. I didn't write this down.
It seemed a little on the nose, but I do appreciate that they clarified that these people are not trying to become apostles or disciples in the higher sense.
Well, Matthew is.
Well, Matthew, yes.
Mary and Rama are not.
Yes.
Yeah, he wrote this down. I just skipped over it, hoping that it wouldn't come up again because it's such a big controversy, and the way that it's addressed here has so much ambiguity. I wouldn't even know where to begin predicting where the show might take this. There's guys on mostly like reformed meme pages on Facebook saying things like women's Bible studies are an oxymoron. Because I saw this recently, and I'm not going to name names. It's a fairly prominent reformed Facebook meme page, but I would rather just allude to this than get really deep into it. But a bunch of people pointed out to him that older women are told to teach younger women. And the guy was like, what are they told to teach them? Yes, we get it. The women should teach women feminine things. And then this guy said, so that means no theology. So all of a sudden, the high and mighty Theo bro is saying that women learning to care for their homes and submit to their husbands is not theological. Now, I understand the distinction between doing an exegetical study through Romans versus the theology of how to be a good wife. Of course, there are those distinctions, but again, we see this Martin Bailey is driving me nuts. Please stop Martin Baileying, folks. That's not what he said. He said women's Bible studies are an oxymoron, and then he pivoted once again, changed his stance to something more reasonable. It's crazy. So when I saw this, that's where my mind went, and I was like, please don't make us address this controversy on the show.
Well, you do have to wonder. Rama is approaching this from a very first century Jewish cultural mindset.
Yeah.
For her, it's perfectly natural that she wouldn't be a teacher because she's a woman. You do almost wonder, like, is the show going to turn that around and be like, no, actually, you can be a teacher. And Jesus' upside down way of doing things. It's like, well,
We'll have to wait till Mary becomes the apostle to the apostles.
oh yes. Well,
That'll be several seasons.
so we'll have to see. But as far as a clarification goes, I agree with Joseph. It's helpful as long as they don't eventually overturn it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the one part that stuck out to me, which is why I chose not to write it down, is because Matthew tells Rama, if you want to know something, you can always ask me. He smiles really big, like the expert. Which, of course, it calls to mind that women are not to speak in church, but they should ask their husbands at home. Another thing these hyper-patriarchy guys are trying to leverage to say that any question related to anything other than housekeeping, a woman always has to ask a man. She cannot ask the pastor's wife or an older, wiser woman at church. It has to be her husband or her pastor, probably. I don't know. But these conversations are realistic because clearly, they're happening now. I don't know if there's been any point in church history where they haven't been topics that were being addressed. But, we have this young couple trying to figure out this dynamic. And I would just really love it if the show did not make us constantly bring up that controversy, because it's happening so much on Facebook and everywhere else right now. I don't want to bring that into this. I like what we have here, and I would rather do without that controversy. But if we have to, we have to. So, next point, at Caesarea Philippi, Philip goes to Nathanael's house and tells him that Jesus is the one. Nathanael asks him if anything good can come from Nazareth. Philip replies, "Come and see." So it's a great little conversation that is made out of that exchange. And
can I throw in a quick comment on Caesarea Philippi? I just want to point out the geography and the trip that they're making in this show is weird. The reason you go to Samaria, or don't, a lot of Jews avoided it, was because you're traveling from Galilee, a Jewish area, to Judea, another Jewish area. You could go around Samaria or you could go through it. The times that we see Jesus go to Samaria in Scripture, this includes right at the start of the Gospel of John, it is because he's going from Judea to Galilee, or the reverse. What the show has done is has had them start in Galilee, and then they go south into Samaria. So this whole time I've been thinking, okay, we're going to see him in Jerusalem next. Nope, they turn straight around and go north into Syria to Caesarea Philippi. And it's like, what is any of this for? Where are you going?
it's like the Doolittle movie.
I thought I knew what they were doing and where they were going, but I didn't, and it frustrates me. But okay,
that's the most heated I've seen you get.
You can't make my map. You can't mess with my maps, okay?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I like the conversation.
Oh yeah, a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any mention of Caesarea Philippi in this passage. We see Philip is from Bethsaida, and Jesus is in Galilee, where he finds Philip. Yeah, I don't know why they even threw it in. Doesn't make sense.
It's a place that Jesus went. Important things happened in Caesarea Philippi. So in coming episodes, we might see some of that. I don't know, but just to go into Samaria and then turn straight back around. What was it for? Anyway, we can move on.
Well, I just, my last note was the Phillips Come and See line actually has a foundation named after it. The Come and See Foundation is what makes The Chosen free. And their website bio reads, "We're on a mission to ensure that all 7 seasons of The Chosen are produced, translated into 600 languages, globally distributed. That's not a word. It doesn't say that. That was my problem. Globally distributed and free for all. From Michigan to Madagascar, people are encountering Jesus through The Chosen, leaving them not what they were. Join us in inviting 1 billion people to find and follow Jesus." And they're also fond of saying that they like to show people the authentic Jesus.
We have yet to see him.
He's coming. He's coming.
Are you referring to the second advent?
Yes, of course.
Okay, of course. Because he's not in the show.
Again, we'll go ahead and thank, apparently, the Come and See Foundation for making the show available to us for free. We do appreciate it. Now, we're, to be clear, I mean, if you look at our setup here, it should be fairly clear that we're not making money off the show. And I have not spent any time trying to figure out how to amass an audience so that we can.
Does this foundation do anything else?
I just read their website bio.
Okay.
I poked around on the website a little bit. It doesn't appear so. It's donations. So I guess we should thank the donors for making The Chosen available to us. And Yeah, there's
At the same time, if your message is come and see, and the thing that you're directing people to see is a TV show about Jesus, rather than like, the Bible itself, just have somebody do a reading of the Gospel of John. That's a better place to come see Jesus than The Chosen. It's not even close.
yeah.
As much of genuine appreciation as we do have for making this available, and I'm sure it's not cheap.
Yeah, well, the Come and See website is basically just a place for donations, and I have no problem with that because they're upfront. They say, here's our mission. We want to make The Chosen free. Here's where you can donate to help the cause. It's not like they're trying to amass profits or act like televangelists. That is not at all the way that it's set up. Yeah, it's a crowdfunding project, which is completely fine. I just happen to, although we, I guess you could say that we participate in the discussion, right? Because we are talking about the show, even though we are mostly critical. We are a part of the discussion, and so what I'm addressing here is the fact that they've taken this line from Scripture, "Come and see," that Philip says, and they've named their foundation after it, and that goes right into what you just said.
Yeah, they're soliciting donations for the purpose of making people see The Chosen, which is not what Come and See should be about. If you were going to make that be about money, it should be about putting Bibles into people's hands or something like that. So, as much as we appreciate this, please don't donate to it. Spend your money better.
Well, I think we can appreciate the conversation between Jesus and Nathanael is pretty biblical. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't stray too much, and when it does, it's not too significant.
Yeah. The one thing we could point out, of course, is that the whole context for Nathanael being under a fig tree and Jesus seeing him there from a distance is not something that the Gospel of John clarifies.
Mm-hmm.
The whole story of him being an architect and then his building partially collapses and he gets fired and then he's praying to God in distress under a fig tree, that's all made up. But then the actual conversation where Jesus says, "I saw you under the fig tree."
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Although it's hard to say if it was powerful in the way that Nathanael actually felt it in real life, because we don't know the context. But the way they filled out the details, I think, was respectful, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that covered a lot of interesting ground. Is there anything else from you two? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Please join us next week for episode 3. And until then, grace and peace to you.